Welcome back to another episode of Junk Whip Junior, folks. Got another important one today. Got my wife's 2017 Jeep Wrangler JK here. Time to do some upgrades on it. So it's got the original Bf Goodrich tires on it, and they're about 85,000 miles in now. They still have a decent amount of rubber left on them, but the problem is we're in Florida and it's rainy season, so I don't want to increase the chance of any accident by trying to get too much life out of an old tire. I know when we need to change them out, and now's the time. So what are we going back with? We are going with the exact same tire, Bf Goodrich All Terrain. How can I afford not to? I mean, when we got 80-some thousand miles out of the factory ones, I'm sure we're gonna get the same thing out of another set. And they're made in USA, so we can't go wrong there. Going a little bit bigger though, need to put on a lift kit. So we got a Rubicon Express budget lift kit here. It's what the heck is this thing? I don't even remember. They call it a budget kit. It's not too much of a lift, but you know, just wanted to keep it kind of basic. We don't need to go too tall. We're not going with that big of a tire, and it's 1 3/4 in the front and 3/4 inch in the rear. So that'll give us 3/4 of an inch lift rear in the front, and the rear, excuse me, and then the front we're just going to bring it up to match that. So they got a pretty good rake on them from the factory, and I just want to get it nice and level. That's, I think, the way they look the best. So real simple kit there. And then shocks, going with Fox shocks on this one. So they were the ones that were actually available right now with all this pandemic crap that we're in, where nobody can ship any products. It was hard enough to find the tires, let alone shocks. So found all this stuff on the shelf, and I said, you know what, this is what we're going with. So we got all made in USA products here. Can't wait to get this thing dialed in and going. So we are going with a little bit different tire size, same tire though. So these are 265 70/17s, and that's a factory tire that came on that Jeep. It had black wheels, but we traded those out with some Rubicon wheels that I found online for sale and just spiffed it up. I think they looked a lot better with the granite color on the Jeep rather than the black wheels that it had. So just a little cleaner look, and we are going with 285 70/17, so a little bit taller, a little bit wider, just going to give it a nice stance. Again, I don't want to go too tall. This is my wife's daily driver. She uses it for work, so it's not practical to put some big old tires on this thing and just kill it. Doesn't make sense for what we're doing. Whoa, about lost some parts there. And not to mention my son, he has actually handicapped, so we don't want to make it too big where it's difficult for him to get in and out of it, you know. And it's one of those things that some Jeep people are like, oh, you got to do this and you got to that. Well, okay, let's just do what works for us. Makes sense to me. So another thing, before I get too far into it, and this is the one that I love the most. So the Jeep came with the factory rock rub rails on here, and they looked really good, but it was hard for my son to get in and out. And I'll never forget, it's happened a few times, but we've been in parking lots and you go to open the door and the steps drop down. So they're pretty common on a lot of vehicles. Now they come on the factory from a lot of them now, but whenever I put these on, they weren't so common, but it worked really good for my son. And a person was like, man, can you believe that? They got a stock Jeep and have steps that drop down on it. Well, guess what? Mind your own business. It's not for me to get in and out. It was for my son. So there you go. All right, so let's get this thing jacked up and get our wheels and tires out there. We're going to support it underneath the frame back here so that our front suspension can droop all the way down, and then we'll have to, when the wheels and tires are off, we're going to have to undo the springs, shock, sway bar end links, so that we can drop the front end down a little bit further to get that spring free to be able to put our spacer in there. So let's get it jacked up. All right, so the instructions tell us that we need to get the vehicle jacked up. Got it done back here, supported with jack stands. We got our floor jack underneath the front differential, and I actually jacked it up a little bit to put some preload on these springs. So the next thing, we have to get our factory shock out of the way, get it unbolted from top stud to bottom bolt. We need to take these sway bar end links off because the kit does come with new longer sway bar end links. And once we do all that, then the differential is going to be free, and we can let the jack down and let the whole thing sag down. We can get these springs out and get our spacers in there, jack it up, and put it all back together. So I'm going to set you up on a time lapse here so you can watch me tear this side apart. Get that bolt out of there, and then you pull this bracket, and it has a tab that locks in on the opposite side. It kind of, there it goes. Now we have plenty of slack to let these hang. Let's get back around here and see if we can actually drop it this time. Okay, so I'm going to leave our jack right there just as kind of a safety, and you can see here our spring is free, not bound up anymore, but it's fully extended, and we still don't have enough room for that spacer to get in there. So what we're going to have to do is push down on each side and let this differential kind of teeter back and forth so that we can get that spacer installed. Okay, so the theory is I'm going to be able to push down on this, get our spring out of here. There's my elbows here. Let's get the spring out. Maybe twist it, shake it just right. Okay. Now this spacer is going to go up in here. This locates where the spring used to ride, and then the spring is going to sit on here, and it has this to hold everything in place. So one thing that we can do before we go too far, just kind of check the fitment. Actually, they might want that taper going up. Yes. They want the taper going up and the lip going down. So it's going to go not like that at all. Unless if it snaps over this ridge here. Just like that. So this is that lip's going to isolate our spring from coming in contact with this mounting stud that they have here. The fun part is getting all this back in there, because we have 1 3/4 less room now. My finger's up in here and not on this bottom one, because I got a feeling that when it does go in there, it's going to go pretty good. One thing, let's spin this spring around. We can twist it once we get in there, but if I put this coil where it starts over here, that's going to give me more room over there to get this spring up there like that. Then we can twist this around, get that engaged in its notch right there again. Now this side is ready to be lifted back up, put back together. But before we do that, we're going to go wrestle the other side. Our shocks are installed, tightened up on the top and bottom. Next step is going to be to put our sway bar end links back on. You can see these are significantly longer than the factory ones, and it might make you question for a minute, well, why in the world is it so much longer? That's way more than the 1 3/4 spacer that we have up here. Well, reason being, when we let the Jeep back down on the ground, these are going to go right in here just like this. But when the Jeep's back down on the ground, it's going to bring our sway bar, instead of having this real downward angle like it has now and from the factory, and it's just going to tuck it up. So it's going to get it probably close to parallel with that frame, gives you a little more tire clearance when it swings in, and just looks a heck of a lot better. Get that thing up and out of the way. We don't need it, so we don't need it to be down in the way. So smart move there. I like that on Rubicon Express. You know, just those little things that makes a difference on the whole install. A bit of anti-seize, and the rear end's actually, or excuse me, the front differential is actually in this Jeep a little bit crooked because it's down so far. The track bar pulls it to one side, so that makes it a little bit awkward here. This would actually be an easier task when the Jeep's on the ground, but while it's in the air, for me it's just as easy to go ahead and do it this way. And they give you a new 1/2-inch bolt for the bottom, because the factory one has a ball joint type end with a stud already made on it. So I'm going to put a little bit of anti-seize on there for good luck. Slide it through. Washer. Nut. Okay. Double check it with the ratchet. Good luck. There we go. Now we can switch to the 1/2-inch, because the bolt that comes with it is not metric. So 1/2-inch bolt, 3/4 socket, and wrench. It feels a whole lot better to have some American tools in my hand than the metric factory stuff, I'll say that. And that's tight. Okay, now we're ready to jack this Jeep back up. Get this bracket situation out in here. That's a little bit of a bummer for me. I really think that this bracket should be should have like a relocator to move it up and around. I'm not a huge fan of the way Rubicon Express decided to do that. You can see, so example for now, even though the jack's under it, just in case, the rear end's the front differential is basically drooped all the way down, and this isn't going to mount in there, and it's about that far off, really. This line may be a situation where I just bend it down some. I kind of hate to do that too much with all that coating on there, but that gets it pretty close there. Interesting, because that's not even in the instructions, so they definitely missed that when they're Rubicon Express. Minor detail. Now when we do let this Jeep back down on the ground and the front differential comes up, it'd probably be fine. But in the event that we're ever, you know, cruising down a trail and it drops all the way down, the last thing I wanted to do is to pop this rubber line here. So we're going to tweak this bracket some and see what we can figure out there, and possibly just straighten out this bend a little bit to give us the clearance we need. One minor detail, I did forget that I got a matching steering stabilizer to go in here as well, because like I say, the shocks and the, you know, it's all factory. It's got 80-some thousand miles on it, so we might as well go ahead and replace that while we're at it. Then all our steering suspension is dialed in tight and right. So let's get this one on there. All right, so as we're going to change this the steering stabilizer, this bolt over here on the passenger side, can't take it out because it hits the tie rod. So we got to get that out of the way. Only way to do it is to knock this ball joint loose here. We're going to take this nut off and give it a few whacks and knock this ball joint loose. And when I say give it a few whacks, I'm not going to use a pickle fork. It's a tool that looks, you know, like a pickle fork, and it goes in there and it'll always pop them right out. And it has a taper to it, so it wedges itself in there and knocks the ball joint right out. Problem is, when you use that tool, it kills the rubber boot where it keeps the grease inside there and all the dirt, debris, and water out. So if you damage that, guess what? Then you have to buy a new tie rod end or a ball joint if that's what you're working on. So I'm not a fan of that method. It does work just fine. I don't feel like changing extra parts, especially if they aren't bad parts. Everything's good, nice and tight here, so no sense in changing that. So we're gonna get this nut loose. I'm gonna take it all the way off so that this thing doesn't drop out, bang itself on the ground, nothing like that. I like the old school method of giving it a whack with a hammer. Now we're not hitting the ball joint, the tie rod end itself / ball joint. We're going to hit it on the cast iron or cast steel part here, and that jars it, and it'll usually drop out when we do that. Get a good swing here. Just like that. And then our boot's still good. We can reuse it again. Let's see if we can sneak it out. Nope, we're going to have to take it all the way. And there's an Allen wrench to hold that from turning, because it just tries to spin down there in the ball joint, or in the socket, I should say. Just has like a little bit of rusty crusty in there, keeping it from being finger loose. You just have to barely wrench it, just enough. That's out of the way. Pull that bolt, drop it down. We're ready to put the new steering stabilizer on there. What a process just to get to that one bolt, huh? Okay, now the way the factory has this is the plastic guard, and this is the body of the shock down here. So that's exactly how I want to put it back on. Slide that up in there. A little bit of anti-seize for good luck. In the factory, they actually have one of these nuts with a tab on it, so you don't have to put a wrench on the backside. I didn't realize that when I was breaking it loose. I had a wrench on there and it wasn't going anywhere. So it's cool because you put it in, and as you're tightening this bolt, it just swings around and it stops on whatever, you know, reinforcement is back there, and then you can just tighten it on up. You only need one wrench. So look at there, they did something nice for us. Alright, it's tight. Now we can knock this factory off down here. And slide this, compress this steering dampener to get it to go on this stud. It's going to be the funnest thing. It's going to try to flop this other side over. But let's see. Let's give it a shot. Nut on there. Now we can come back out here and reinstall the ball joint. Let's go ahead and do this. A little bit there. There we go. So right now that shock's trying to fight us and extend itself. It goes real slow, but that's what it's trying to do. Let's snap back up. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and tighten these up, finish up the front end, then we can put our tires back on, flip this thing around, and we'll start working on the back end. So pretty much just like the front end, we got to disconnect our rear sway bars and get our rear shocks off. Then we can lower that rear end down just like we did on the front, pull the springs out, get our spacers up in there, jack it back up, reconnect our shocks and our sway bar end links. Now I did screw up. I didn't read all of the instructions before I started. I was just reading the front section, and the sway bar end links that I put on the front that came with the kit, it didn't say in the instructions that they were for the front. I just kind of assumed that they were, but actually what they want us to do is kind of unique. They wanted those longer ones to go on the back here because this is a longer one, and they want us to reuse this factory end link on the front end to kind of split the difference. So that way they don't have to include 4 parts when there's 2 of the factory ones that we can reuse. So my mistake there. Once I got to the second half of the instructions, we were working on the rear half, that's when I noticed that I screwed that up. Not a big deal, just a couple bolts. We can take them out of the front and put them back here. Problem solved, no big whoop. Well, that's going to do it for the install of our Rubicon Express budget lift/leveling kit. Got our Fox stocks installed, got all our new end links in the correct location. After you read the instructions, you can figure out exactly where they go. The new ones go on the back, The rear ones go in the front, like I said. These brake lines actually work out really nice. It's all the way extended, and we still got some slack in them on both sides, so I'm happy with that. Now we've got to get our new BFGs mounted on their factory wheels. We can bolt those up and then take it to the shop and get this thing aligned, and that'll have her dialed right in. Well, there you have it. The stock Jeep is stock no more. It's all grown up just a little bit. So nice little budget lift on there. Like it. It's not too much. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't want to have something that's too big and too ridiculous and impractical. It's still a daily driver. It's still hauling kids around. So it's not an ultimate off-road machine. We're not going for that at all. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed it. Now you can maybe learn a few tips on installing one of these yourself. It's relatively simple to do. It was kind of a one-day project max. I had to split it up into 2 afternoons. That's just the way my schedule works. But nonetheless, in you know, a few hours, you could definitely have this thing knocked out. So now it's off to the shop to get this thing realigned, and we'll get our tires balanced, and then it's ready to put some miles on it and hit some trails. So hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks again for watching Junko F Jr., and we will see you next time.